I wanted to bring somebody on with you guys. You know, we've talked about having like really fucking amazing agency owners, and my man here, Michael Mogill, has started a company called Chris Video, and their kind of shtick is what I would call like Hollywood videos for local businesses. Like they take like they build a movie trailers and make them really exciting and tell their story in this beautiful way. And I wrote down a couple of things because I don't want to forget anything here. One of the things I think is really amazing, Michael, is you've taken like kind of like a small agency that's actually with custom videos. That's a really hard to scale kind of business model, and you've made this one of the 500 fastest growing companies. You officially got recognized for that with all the scale and operations, and even cooler than that, you started to get to branch out into like using conferences and stuff to pre-sell your stuff, and you've had even hired Gary V from what I heard. That's a pretty chunk of change. And all of that you've been doing, well, it's pretty amazing to me is you had two little girls. So somehow you're managing to pull that off. So firstly, welcome aboard and thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to ask you, because obviously a lot of people I think in my circle won't necessarily relate to where you're at now in your giant fishbowl office with like a team of a gazillion people working for you. But you started from zero. Like you built this up, no funding, no anything. You're just a guy with a video camera making great videos. I wonder if you could take me back to like that first video and kind of like what you were thinking and how you wanted to stand out from the noise and just like what that whole journey was like.
Yeah, so for those that don't know the story, when I started the company, this is back in 2012. I had $500 to my name, was working out of my apartment. So we never had any loans, no investors, no partners, none of that stuff. And it was very much like sweat equity in the sense. I mean, I was doing everything. I was filming the videos, I was editing the videos, I was doing the sales, the marketing, the billing, the finance. I mean, it was just me. And I used to always, it's funny, when I would present to clients, I'd always say we. But at that time, it was really just me on my own. And I'll tell you what, looking back at that time, there was to a certain point, I think grit can really take you, right? So meaning that just working really hard, and I may not have been like, let's say the smartest or the most talented, but I could work really hard. I would work, crazy hours, like talking like 14, 15 plus hour days, and just, and I never thought about, this is back in 2012. I never had this love of like, or almost like this infatuation with this idea of entrepreneurship. It was just what I was doing. And to me, what started as a hobby started to turn into a business. But I never like thought I've got to get business cards or I've got to get an office or I've got to do any of this stuff. That wasn't really the goal from the onset. At first, it was just, let me see if I could just have one paying client, and then how to, I like to scale and multiply things. So how can we get two, and how do we grow from there? And then I didn't even start hiring our first team member until I realized while I was at a video shoot in New York, there was a firm that wanted to shoot in Chicago, and I couldn't be in two places at once. And at that point, I'm like, well, since I can't be in two locations at the same time, I need to be able to figure out how to scale that. And we started with contractors, and then years later that would expand to just all employees. But I didn't know anything. Let me just put it that way. I believe in terms of like from a skill set, I've always loved sales and I've always loved marketing, but I had no formal training in any of that. No formal training in finance or how to run a business or how to hire people or how to develop processes. I didn't know any of this stuff. So grit took me from 2012 to really, I'd say 2014, and the business grew, but it was never something that was sustainable. There wasn't really much scale. It was just I could sell. But that didn't mean, but it was always heavily dependent upon me. Let me put it that way. There was no systems, there were no processes, there was no repeatability. I had no idea how to hire great people. I would base that on gut instinct, and I was wrong most of the time. We had no formal training or onboarding. So I say this in the sense that when I look back at what I was doing, I was a hardworking person. Doing a job that I thought was a business, but I don't know that it was a business then. And it wasn't really until 2014 when I met my wife, who came from a business consulting background. She was an engineer. I asked her to step into the business for 30 days and see if we could just put some processes in place. And 30 days has now turned into 7+ years. But she helped to lay a lot of that groundwork. And I started to realize, wow, there's this whole world that I don't know. And that's where I really started learning the business side of things and going to conferences and reading books and all these different things to develop that competency. And also, I didn't even have the self-awareness to know these are my strengths and these are the things that I should focus on. So I guess just looking back at that time, it was a lot of hard work and a lot of grit, but it wasn't anything that was ever repeatable. And I would, every year would be back to zero. And actually every month would be back to zero when you really look at it. So I look at that. And to me, the more interesting thing is, when did it really start to scale and take off? And I would say that was probably in 2015 and certainly 2016, 17.